Welcome once again to another awesome episode of the Flama podcast, the ultimate guide for the gaming industry. My name is Angel, and today we have a very cool guest, Vanessa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Angel. I'm so happy to be here.
I got you, Vanessa. If you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Vanessa Lane, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of BetterPlay Studios. We work with psychologists to create a gaming platform that's good for your mental health without sacrificing any of the fun.
Gotcha. That sounds very interesting. I have heard, games as escapism,
Yeah.
games as a way of connecting with other people, games as a source of finding meaning, games as art. Rarely do I hear about games as a source of something to improve your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of interesting, isn't it? I think we all grew up with gaming, and it was kind of like, oh, they're watching TV or they're playing games, and it was just this bad thing. We've seen this happen with TV where there has been, like, we just have to be honest, like, there has been some really good TV lately, like in the last decade. I would maybe say like AMC with like The Walking Dead was like maybe the start of like some just really excellent, qualitatively different TV. I think the same is true about all kinds of media. But kind of before I get into that, the thing about games that just makes it different is like play is just so important for people, period. It's not just kids. It's not just for kids. Like everybody needs to play. We know that from the Blue Zone studies that play and stress relief is an important part of a healthy lifestyle. And we forget to do that. And there's a lot of good reasons we don't play. Like maybe we feel like we can't because we're taking care of family, or honestly, some people are working multiple jobs and just like the stress is high and there's no time to play. But games and just play in general are so important. So I'm an advocate for all kinds of games, not just video games, board games, tabletop games. Like they get you social, they get you talking to people, playing outside, super important, or doing something recreational. Maybe play for you is theater, or it's a choir that you're a part of, or something in your community. But play is a critical part of mental health. And I could go on for days about that. So before I get too long-winded, I'll pause.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer, and I agree with you. Play is very important for us as human beings. Um, do you think the perception of, more specifically, video games has
Mhm.
changed throughout the last years? Because me growing up, games usually had a very negative stigma, and I think in the
Yeah.
90s, right, when Doom was released or Mortal
Mhm.
Kombat, if there were some tragedy, some bad stuff that happened, usually people would blame video games.
Right.
Uh, do you think that perception? Sorry, do you think that perception has changed, or is it something that still remains in our zeitgeist?
Yeah, definitely. So before I get started, one of my favorite resources on this topic is Dr. Rachel Coert's book. And she edited this with Thorsten Quant, and so he's also Dr. Quant. It's called The Video Game Debate, and they made two versions of it. So they edited two collections of studies that's very important. I think it's really helpful to know like what the science says about this.
Right,
So the video game debate 1 and 2, those have been really helpful for me as like the leader of this company, to just like understand like what the science actually says and then what the conversation is like. So we know that sometimes like the science can say one thing, but like mainstream media says something different. So like that's one point, is like make sure like you understand the science.
right.
But I was a young kid, and this is a little touchy, so maybe trigger warning, for school shootings. But I was
Okay.
9 years old when Columbine happened, and I remember I was a child. That was the one in Colorado. I was a child, and it was, I remember CNN just like going constantly about like, well, these kids were playing video games and blah blah blah,
Right.
and like, did video games really have anything to do with the tragedy that happened that day? And I think that and I feel this as a parent. I think it can be really tempting to want to blame like the lowest hanging fruit for like why there's a problem, and oh well, the video games are violent, so that made our kids violent, and let's protest this, instead of actually looking at the children who committed these crimes instead of looking at like mental health and like that's the hard thing to fix and solve.
Right.
And maybe you can't quite fix it. It's easier to blame something like video games. So I think that video games absolutely get a bad rap. And the same thing is happening now. Like this isn't just this wasn't just true in the 90s, when Columbine
Right.
happened. We see this again too with smartphones. A lot of states are banning
Mhm.
smartphones. And while I tend to be more in favor, personally, just more in favor of a smartphone free school,
Right.
you actually do have to look at what the science says. And again, Dr. Rachel Cohort, she's someone who's looked into this and has good resources about cell phone use in teenagers. And so I would encourage parents and families and leaders in our community to just like make sure you know what the science is actually saying. So yeah, I think in some ways the conversation has shifted more away from video games and more onto smartphones, and I do think that's for good reason. Um, and then in my community, I'll just kind of end by saying, in my community, I do think people still kind of I get a little bit of side eye in my community
Really?
for like, wait, like video games and mental health, just a little bit, because I live
Okay.
in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and this is like a highly educated, very much like University of Michigan, Michigan medicine, go blue community. And people I think are much more, they're like, huh, I guess that makes sense. But it's not their first thought. And so I think there is some healthy skepticism, but video games would not be like the first place mainstream people would turn for mental health, even though research shows us that like everybody plays video games.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you think it's more of like a generational thing, like a previous generation that didn't grow up with video games, not really understanding what they're all about? Do you think it's mostly
Yeah.
like shifting the blame for not taking responsibility? Like,
Yeah, and I think too, like there are some people that like have like they do game in unhealthy amounts. So like I want to be honest about that. But most people, and we know this from the Entertainment Software Association's 2023 Power of Play report, like most people say they play video games for stress relief and for anxiety relief. And
hmm,
so I do think that gamers are becoming more open about like why they play games. And I do think it is like it could be generational. Like, yeah, this is how I unwind. And millennials and Gen Z like tend to be a little bit more open about like, no, sorry, I need to have some boundaries and take care of my mental health. One thing I do for my mental health is I play games. So that's something that I think younger people are generally more comfortable with. So yes, I would agree.
okay. Awesome. Perfect. When it comes to Better Play Studios, I understand you didn't start as an entrepreneur, as someone making a gaming company. I believe you
Hmm.
were a teacher, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
How did that transition happen and why did it happen?
Okay, so I loved being a teacher. I went to college knowing that I would be a teacher, and like I'm one of those people that loves middle schoolers. And I know there's a handful of us out there, and they're just so weird. They have like one foot in childhood and one foot in adulthood, and
Right.
like one day they might come in with like black spiky hair, and the next day it might be purple, and you act like you don't notice. You say, "Hey, it's nice to see you again." Like everybody gets a fist bump or a high five or a handshake on their way out the door. It's like I loved it. Like I
Really?
loved Oh yeah, I loved the environment and like creating that
Oh,
space for kids to just be themselves. I loved it. The problem was like I personally was dealing with my own mental health challenges. So I I ended up getting diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, and I had to go on disability. So that was like a really big moment for me, just personally recognizing that I didn't have enough daily tools to manage my own stress and anxiety.
mhm.
And then it caused me to have like pretty severe panic attacks. Had I been managing my stress in healthier ways, I think I would have. I could have prevented some of the pain and anguish I went through. So I ended up
Right.
going on disability, and then I returned to teaching for one more year. After that, I took a break, and then I came back for one last year. And then was having kids and living in Seattle, Washington at the time. And then at that point I knew like I wanted to get into tech. Like I just thought like tech is more my thing. And I
Mhm.
really like just like generally like the tech space. I like the fast pace. I like just the whole like atmosphere. And so I ended up getting a master's degree from Boston University in computer information systems. So fast forward a bit to the pandemic, where everybody like everybody was struggling.
Yeah.
I fell back into video games. Like video games, like that was a huge way that I just felt more human. Like my husband would put my kids to sleep, who were like they were both under 5 at the time, and I would play Roller Coaster Tycoon, and like that was the jam. Like that was the one that really just like got me back on the horse. Like, oh man, I feel like myself again. I feel like Vanessa again. And then we started playing, we slowly started playing like the Mario Party, Mario Kart, like
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
games. And then quickly it turned into Stardew Valley. And like, that's how, like, that's like more
Mm.
hardcore.
Right.
So we got back into it. And the same thing actually happened for my co-founder. Like he really found his way back to Xbox gaming during the pandemic. So, I mean, that was a big moment for us. And then, yeah. And then we kind of move forward from there. I'm happy to talk more about like how we started the company from that point, if that helps.
Of course, definitely. Yes,
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
continue.
So Michael and I, my co-founder, we've been working together at this point. We've been working together for like more than 6 years, and we've worked together
Oh.
across a couple different jobs. So technically, this is our third job together. So there's like a high level of trust between the two of us. I really respect his leadership style. He's been my boss twice, and
Mm.
he's just like he's a good boss. Like I hate to say it, like not everyone's a good boss. So when you find one,
Mhm.
you just really value it. And we were working together at this company where, long story short, we ended up working with a professional esports team, and they were having a hard time getting along. A lot of challenges with like mental resilience, and like low key they just kept losing. Like it just like that's translation for like we can't get along, we're not getting it together, and we're not
Right.
figuring it out in a way where we can win. And so our team came in and coordinated this, like the building of a psychometric app and then a coaching
Oh.
platform. So it helped them measure their mental performance and then applied coaching to it to make them more effective. Long story short, they ended up winning. They kept winning, they kept winning, they kept winning, and then they won the 2022 5v5 NBA 2K championship. So that was life-changing money for these guys, and it was an awesome experience. They really liked the coaching. They really liked
Mhm.
that, like thinking about their own thinking about like how they're feeling and how they're doing, and how that plays a role in how they engage as a teammate. So we were really pleased to see those results for them and really proud of their work. It was their work that did it, and we were happy to support it. So at that point, we kind of got the seed of the idea for our company. But then we were like, okay, well, we want to approach it very differently. So um, we started the company, and then we had to like wait a little bit just to make sure like intellectual property things were on the up and up. And then um, we actually launched a gaming company where we were going to make this game called The Outdwellers, and we actually made a playable prototype of a narrative adventure game, and it's awesome. Like it is an awesome game. And that project, we kind of temporarily put that project on hold just because we did some customer discovery through the National Science Foundation's iCore program. And like what
Mhm.
that customer discovery showed us is that there's actually a real need for therapists to have like they have a lot of waiting lists, especially like in rural communities and in urban
Right.
communities. And so like they need tools now to help people who are like stuck on a wait list, who just need something to like hold them over just to get
Right.
through the daily ups and downs of life. And we were like, okay, we see an opportunity to leverage the power of video games in this way. So that's what really inspired our pivot from like making games to making our Kozee platform. And then
Mm.
with the Kozee platform, like we're able to like we can help people at like a pretty large scale with that. And again, we're not replacing therapy, we're not trying to be a doctor. We're literally we're a tool to help you manage your daily ups and downs, your daily stress and anxiety, through the power of video games. So our platform has 14 games on it right now. They've been vetted by our psychology team to highlight their potential therapeutic benefits, and then we track your mood before and after you play. So it's like very early. It's like not even a beta at this point. But
Right.
we are quickly making iterations on it. And oh man, I'm just so excited about like where this is going, because where it's going, like we're going to be able to quickly evaluate and impact your mood. So with the help of video games. So just, I love it
Exactly.
so much.
It's sort of like Game Pass for
Mhm.
like games that help you with your mental health, right?
Game Pass for mental health. That was it. That's it. That's what it is. So
Let's go. And
yeah.
yeah, I can definitely vouch for you because in my preparation for this episode, I played Kozee for about a couple of hours, 2, 3 hours.
Thank you. It
And
means the world.
yes, and I played Chill Seekers, the one with
Yeah,
the penguins.
so
And
good.
I played, yes, Trenga, which was my favorite. Shoutouts to Trenga, by the way.
Oh man, love those guys. Love them.
Yes.
Yeah, so
And
great.
I played it in a time where I was like a little bit stressed about work and a lot of things. I played Trenga and I was like, oh, I feel more focused, much more aware, much more present in the moment. So
Mm.
I can vouch it definitely works.
That makes me, first of all, thank you for playing. Like everyone who can play, and just like we just need feedback because this is early. We're an early stage company.
Right.
The more people we can get on this, the better. So thank you. And then secondly, the games we have are good games. Like we all know what the industry is like right now. It is really tough to be a small studio or a solo
Right.
dev. We are honored to have those games on our platform. We have agreements with the developers; they get paid a small stipend, and then we host their game. It's at this point it's not exclusive, but it's to show a concept. And yeah, we're honestly just like so proud of the content we have. The art is beautiful, the gameplay mechanics are smooth, and the creativity of the games are
Mhm.
great. And I have to give a shout out to my co-founder because he has a really good eye for like what game is good for the Kozee platform, because it
Mhm.
has to be a little bit eclectic, because like Kozee means different things to different people. Like they're generally Kozee mechanics are, therapeutic,
Right.
they're repetitive. There tends to be an autumnal theme, so like this is our season, cozy gamers, this is our time. But Trenga isn't really like that, but it does elicit the same feelings. And so Michael does a really good job of finding the right balance of hardcore cozy and games that are good for you. So like the games that make it on our platform are thematically about mental health.
Right.
They are they can have cozy mechanics. They can be generally like good for you or brainy. And so those are the games that we want on our platform. And then our psychology team vetted them for us.
Perfect. So I heard you say before in another podcast, you say our games are not edutainment.
Hmm.
They're like full-fledged games.
Yeah.
And I resonate with it because a lot of times when people say, "Oh, play this game is good for you," it's not really fun. It's kind of lame to be honest. But the games in Cozy, they're like actually full-fledged games. They're actually fun. They have a
Right.
fun mechanic.
Right.
How come you didn't want to go that edutainment route?
Thank you for asking that. What a great question.
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
as a former teacher, I care so much about this. Kids, this isn't true for just kids, because we're actually marketing toward young adults. Like our target demo is tends to be like 18 to 40, give or take a little bit. And then we,
Okay.
we actually have a surprising amount of older adults because again, they grew up with video games. Um, we I care so much about this because if you make something gamified after the fact, like edutainment, like the implication there is that the educational aspect is the driving force, and then
Mhm.
the attainment, like the edutainment part, is
Yeah.
just like the confetti or like the sprinkles on top of the cake. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Like you have to lead with fun. You absolutely have to lead with fun because like as a teacher, my students, I worked hard to build respect with them, and they would do things that I asked them to do that were not fun, but it shows, and it's not a good experience. But if I had them do something that was genuinely fun first, and then we like wedged in the educational aspect, that landed better and it created more meaning for them. And when there's more meaning created, then it sticks with them better. So I'm really passionate about that. And then also just based on what we know about games in and of themselves, games are work a lot of the reason they work has to do with self-determination theory. So
Mhm.
self-determination theory, it talks about, it's a framework that like looks at how people, like how they're motivated and like how their personality kind of comes into being. So games help with that because they facilitate autonomy, relatedness, and competency. So autonomy is just like, like, do you have control over your situation? Games are great at teaching that.
Right.
Competency, like, can you win at something? Can you be effective? And
Right.
then relatedness is like, there's like that social and like that sense of belonging, right? So even if it's a solo player game, like my daughter plays Legend of Zelda constantly, and it's like she's in Hyrule, like she's there,
Right.
So like she has that relatedness, even though it's not truly like a multiplayer game. So with edutainment, I sometimes think people try too hard to do the entertainment side, or like they overdo it, or
Yeah.
they underdo it. And it's like, just let the game be a game. Like these games that we have on Kozee, they are good in and of themselves. They're good in and of themselves. So like we can let those games work on people, because games have that power innately. And if it's a good game, then it's going to
Mhm.
achieve those things. And then we'll see the mood benefits, or the therapeutic benefits after the fact.
Exactly. Regarding self-determination theory, which I've heard of
Mhm.
before. When it comes to you personally, what
Mhm.
drives you, Vanessa, to play
Yeah.
video games? Is it self-determination, connect with other
Mm.
people? What drives you personally to play video games?
Yeah, so for me, I noticed that lately, and this has changed kind of throughout my life, and I do think it's significant. And I tend to gravitate toward games like Roller Coaster Tycoon,
Mhm.
or Stardew Valley, or even like Civilization to some extent. If I step back and think about it, and I've actually talked to my therapist about this, and she and I are like, we're on the same page. So like, if it's good enough for her, it's good enough for me. Um, I think for me, it's like I tend to go to those games when I feel like I'm losing some control. So
Oh.
sometimes it helps me to like, I feel like I kind of have my act together when I have my farm in line in Stardew Valley. It's like, okay, you know what? All those parsnips have been watered, fed the animals, picked up all the eggs, maintaining my relationship with Harvey or Elliot, or which Sebastian, which, God forbid. I'm kidding. But, maintaining my relationships, like it makes me feel a little bit more in control of like something that is in the big picture, in the grand scheme, is kind of meaningless. And so like
Mhm.
finding control in those moments helps me then take control of something in my real life. So I often go to those spaces to like gain some control. I've also
Got
noticed that when I'm intentional, because like I'm like a pretty high strung person, and it can be hard for me to relax. When I'm intentional, like I can really use a lot of like the classic Nintendo games, like Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, Mario Kart. Those games can really help me unwind, and then I feel like that's the first layer for me, and then I can really like unlock as like a mom and a wife and a friend and a
Mhm.
sister, then I can really unlock. So like that's what really drives. I've noticed that's what really drives me to play, and I spend a lot of time thinking about it because this is my job. But I would encourage like anyone listening, like think about like why you play and like why that motivates you, and there's no wrong answers here. It's like we all play for
Right.
different reasons, and for
Right.
in different seasons of our life. Like when I'm grieving, I play different games than when I feel like things are going really well for me. So I just think just in watching the changes too, like that can be really interesting.
Exactly. I love how you frame that because games are not merely escapism. You can go into a game, get something out of it, and use it in your daily life. As you
Right.
mentioned before, to be a better mother, better
Mhm.
sister, better wife. Yeah, there's definitely value there. And I've noticed, yes, there's a lot of like management going on in the games that you like. In Civ, Stardew
Yep.
that, yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Do you like being a manager? Is that something you enjoy? Like in your
Yeah,
company?
so as far as like being a manager, in my work life, like I always feel pretty like incompetent at that. Like that's one thing I actually look to my co-founder. He's a great manager.
Right,
So he did great at that. I have a lot of room to grow in management. Like I have led teams before.
right.
I think I do a good job of like setting expectations and then being supportive, removing barriers. Like I try to keep
Mhm.
it simple. I don't always do a good job of like managing some of like the interpersonal aspects. And I think isn't that like that's like leadership though. Like leadership is all like it's all about people. It's a lot of people problems. And I love the teams that I've had. And like there so yeah, I think sometimes, like if I'm being honest, like that's an area of growth like I have. And so I think like the management aspect it feels like when you're playing Civ, it's like a lot colder. You know what I mean? Like I'm not dealing with like
Right.
this person's sick today and it's like the fifth time they're sick, and I'm not dealing with that kind of stuff. I'm dealing with like, hey, like, are you going to conquer the city or not? So it's a little bit
Right.
colder, and I think it like maybe makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, I mean, games and games make us vulnerable like that. So it's like, yeah, I do think that. And just to answer your question though, like generally, yes, I do enjoy being a manager. I think I do really like being in the CEO role. Like I think that's
Right.
really been comfortable and uncomfortable for me in all the right ways. So that's something that's like a little bit more my speed, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Definitely. For Civ, are you like an aggressive player? Do you like winning by conquering states, or do you do it more by influence or religion?
Yeah, yeah. So so I think like when I play games, especially like Civ, I
Yeah.
tend to be more aggressive and like
Ooh.
and I lose. Like I'm okay with losing, or I'm okay with like making an aggressive mistake because that's like my instinct just in life. I tend to personally my leadership style, like as like a CEO or as like a leader in my
Yeah.
community, tends to
Yeah.
be more like lead by influence, and I'm a little bit more like of the people. And I think it's
Right.
because like I have to counter, like I'm fighting, I'm always fighting against the Vanessa inside me, like the instinct is to like be domineering and dominant and just crush
Ooh.
everybody. But like that does not jive with my belief system. Like that is not the
Right.
way that is
Right.
not the way that I believe life should be and leadership should be. So I'm a little bit more like in real life, I'm a little more of the people. And then
Gotcha.
when I play, I love to be aggressive, and I'll lose, and it's okay. So
Gotcha. Is there a way you can harness that aggressiveness?
yeah, I think I've had to like learn how to do that over the years. And I think anyone who, as like a woman leader, I think, I've heard a lot, like you're aggressive or you're tough, the phrase, unfortunately, I've heard the phrase like ball buster or like you're a tough nut to crack. I've heard that a lot
Oh.
in my young, I'm 34. I'm not that old. So, and I think I don't think it's like even that bad for me. I think it's worse for other
Mhm.
like people who are historically, marginalized in leadership roles. So like I'm not going to sit here and complain about it, but I think that I have had to learn to harness it, and like what harnessing it has produced is resilience. And so
Mm.
I just like I'm like a New York City sewer rat and or pigeon. Like I will eat cigarette butts off the ground. I will like you can't lose me. I can't die. I'm going to survive. I'm going to live in the sewer if I have to. Like I will
Whoa.
claw my way to the top. Like it's like I'm not going anywhere. Like I will run through a brick wall. Honestly, like and I believe in like what we're doing at the company. Not to shift gears too much, but like I believe in
Mhm.
like what we're doing so much, and I'm so motivated by that why. So like that aggression and like that aggressiveness, like I've harnessed it into my why, and it's produced resilience and focus. So that's kind of like my superpower, I guess.
Awesome. Perfect. I have another personal question before we
Mhm.
go into the business side.
Mhm.
Do you think that part of yourself, is it innate to you, or is it something cultural?
Hmm. That's a good question. So I think like I've been this way since I remember. So
Mhm.
I think it's like a little bit of both.
Mhm.
I think that growing up in a house where like my mom's a teacher and my
Okay.
dad is a multi-time like entrepreneur. So I did both. And I think when you're a teacher, like that is like a you put it all out there. Like I love teachers so much because they put it all out there for kids.
Yeah.
They are performers. They are it's like it's science because they're always looking at test scores and like how do I get this kid from here to here, and like how like there's a lot of testing that's involved in teaching. And then it's also an art because you're performing and you're like how do I make this concept really work for kids. And so being a teacher, I think like really like that was like an environment that like made me even more so this way. And then I think too, growing up with my dad as an entrepreneur, that is just like comfortable for me. Like the discomfort that comes with like our burn rate is really low. How are we going to raise money? Let's go find some non-dilutive funding. Let's go talk to investors. Like that is very comfortable for me. And one thing, and one reason I think that's important is if like anyone's listening and they're like, well, I don't have a parent who's an entrepreneur, or
Mhm.
I don't I'm just kind of a shy person. It's like everything that we're doing, like, that makes entrepreneurs successful, it can be learned. Like, it's not some and of course there are privileges that people have that, make them more successful than others sometimes. Like, that's a reality. But everything that I'm talking about today, like, it can be learned. So, like, I think that's just really important.
Of course. Awesome, perfect. When it comes to I checked your website many times. It's super well structured. Uh, when it comes to Better Play Studios,
Mhm.
there's a phrase that you use. You say, "Games that are good for you." What do you mean by that? As in good, what
Okay.
is good?
Yeah, so games that are good for you. Well, first of all, a lot of games can be good for you. And so again, like, I'm really passionate about the science. So, like, make sure you're
Yeah,
reading up on like what the scientists are saying and like the peer reviewed researchers say. I do believe, and we believe this as a company, that not all video games are created equal. Some video games, especially like mobile games, maybe they use like gotcha systems, or just like the way they can be kind of predatory with like how they like charge.
yes.
Even games that, like, some mobile games that I found really fun. It just, as soon as you have to pay so much to just like stay in it, and it's like, dude, I don't want to be spending money like this. Um, and then of course, when you have a social game, like a massive multiplayer online role playing game, um, there's like the toxicity that comes with communities. So there are some really real concerns around video games. Like, everyone, like, right now it's very trendy to talk about how, games are so good for you.
Sure.
Not all games are created to be good for you.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is look at potentially therapeutic mechanics, and we're trying to figure out, with metadata, and things like that, like games that could possibly improve your mood. So I can speak like specifically, like, what we're focused on right now is looking at games that have metadata that we can recommend to you that can move you from one mood state to another. And that sounds really confusing, but all that means is, if you're feeling bored, there are
Mhm.
some games that might make you feel more excited or even bring you to a level of contentment. If you're feeling anxious, there are some games that might bring you to a place of, um, again, contentment, or that might make you feel calmer. So
Right.
that's where we're focused as a company. Um, One comparison that I would say is like, well, before I say that, we're curating games that our psychology team is looking at,
Mhm.
that they're saying, like, okay, like, here's some potential benefits that these games could offer. Just because we're curating these games and saying that about these games does not mean that other games are not necessarily good for you. But we've just
Right.
highlighted some games that we can have on our platform that we have officially said, like, yes, like, we believe in these
Right.
games.
Right.
So the way I would, and here's what I was going to say before, like, I would kind of compare it to like PBS. I don't know if there's, and this is probably going to hit for people who are younger or and remember watching PBS Kids, or people who have kids.
Okay.
Um, PBS is just qualitatively different than what you have on Cartoon Network. Like,
Sure.
it is just, and I'm not saying Cartoon Network's bad. Like, I watched a lot of Cartoon Network shows as a kid, but there's just something like different and like better about it. And there's just something like, it's like slower, and maybe better is not even the right word, because that's opinion, not fact. But
Right.
there is just something different about it. I would even say Bluey, like, Bluey is doing something to families and kids, and it's inspiring conversation in a way that a TV show hasn't done in a very long time. So there is just something qualitatively different about Bluey compared with a lot of like other things that are on the market right now.
Sure.
For adults, I would say, like, and again, like, this is just like limited to like my niche. So like, this is like skewed, but Ted Lasso, like, a lot of people like found Ted Lasso to help really inspire conversation and get them talking about their mental health. So we're kind of trying to do something similar with video games, of like having like a curated selection. And again, like, we're able to highlight the work of amazing dev teams and amazing studios by doing this. So it's not like we get the credit for it. It's like, people made these games and made them
Right.
awesome. So there's a lot of really good content out there, high quality stuff that gets buried on Steam or just never sees the light of day because of the saturation of the market. And so we're trying to curate like these games together. So yeah, it's high quality. It tends to be like positive in some way, even if it's about dark stuff, like tends to
Mhm.
have like a positive view of mental health. And then doesn't have like these toxic systems inside that can lead to like gambling like behavior and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So we talked about games that are psychologically good for you. They've been proven, vetted by, psychology
Mhm.
professionals. Are there games that are objectively bad for you? You mentioned gambling before, but
Yeah.
would you say that, okay, this game is objectively bad for you, psychologically speaking? Are there
Yeah,
games
I
like
so I'm actually not comfortable saying that there's like a game that's like objectively bad for you,
that?
because I do take the science like really seriously, and I think I've said that like 3 times already. So I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
apologize for being boring.
No,
Like
you're
it's a
good,
very
you're good.
boring answer, but honestly, it's like a responsible answer because you kind of have to look and decide for yourself. I think I think it's a relatable thing to say like there might be a good game that is not good for everybody. One example is I was dealing with some depression months ago, like almost a year ago at this point, more than a year ago at this point, and was playing a lot of Stardew Valley. And Stardew Valley is a perfectly fine game. There's nothing wrong with Stardew Valley, but I was playing it too much, and that was
Mm,
not good for me. So I'm hesitant to say like there's like a game that's like bad for you. There's games that like I think might not resonate with people's like belief systems, and so I think families have to make those decisions with their
right.
eyes open and like and make them as a family and like and have conversations. Like there are games that I don't let my kids play.
Mhm.
Like for example, like Grand Theft Auto I think is one that comes up a lot, and
Sure.
there is not you can't look at like the science is kind of mixed on this, but like there's nothing bad that like I can't sit here and say, oh, Grand Theft Auto is a terrible game for you. It's gonna just destroy your mental health. But what I can say is like there are things that happen in Grand Theft Auto that don't resonate with my family's values. So like my kids are not gonna play that game right now. At least not right now. Not while they're in the house and like kids. If they choose to play that as an adult, like that's their decision. But that's just not something I want to glorify or like um praise. And I have like pretty personally like have like pretty strict views about like guns
Right.
and stuff like that. And so like
Sure.
again, like families have to like make those decisions with knowing the science and understanding like their values and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I know that's kind of a non-answer on how, but like
Yeah.
I need to just like I think when people try to like answer that and say yes, like this game is bad for you, that game is bad for you, but like I think that can be really dangerous. One last thing I will say is a lot of these like there's like a lot of these like cybersecurity folks will say like they
Mhm.
highlight the dangers of like Roblox and Minecraft and some of these games where like chat functions and communication is enabled. And so I would just like advise people like be aware of the risks that come with social games because toxicity runs rampant in these communities. And it doesn't mean the game is bad. It just means like you have to be really careful about like the toxicity.
Gotcha. How do you define toxicity? Because I feel like a lot of times, in games, especially when I play with my friends, there's a
Yeah.
level of banter. That's
Yeah.
important. Trash talk. It makes the game fun. But I do agree, it can be toxic sometimes. How do
Yeah.
you? 'Cause it can be on a
Yeah.
spectrum, right? How do you determine? Okay, this is kind of toxic. This is kind of not. Because I feel like sometimes,
Yeah.
uh, I forgot what game it was.
Mhm.
But they have like an AI. I think it's Call of
Yeah.
Duty.
Yeah, I
I
think
an,
didn't
an
Riot
AI.
do that? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
an
yeah,
AI.
yeah, it's
An
Call of Duty,
AI.
yeah, I think and, like, Activision and Blizzard, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think and that was a big deal, and they're doing a lot to actually, like, address that, and then they're doing, even more, like, with their terms as well, like, I think that it's a big part of it. So just toxicity, it would be, like, verbal abuse,
Mm,
harassment, intention to, like, trip up a player, harm them,
sure. Sure.
and I'm probably missing things, but I think a lot of it is like intention and then like the hatred, like hate speech, things like that. Um, so like there's a difference between like banter and then like the intention, like you're really trying to harm someone. And then I also
Right.
think I think even like the bot that you're talking about can try it can like detect like swearing and like the tone that's used with it.
Yeah,
So like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
some groups are okay with swearing, and again, that's like a values thing. It's like, are you
Sure,
cool with this or not, right?
sure.
So some people are cool with that, and then it's like what's behind that, right? So um, it,
Right.
it's yeah, it's pretty. I don't know. It's pretty clear like when you see it. It's not always clear like to like name necessarily. Like you can say, okay, well, we won't have any no racism, no anti-Semitism,
Sure,
like you can
sure,
like
sure.
list the things. But then people always find a way to get around it. And so that's why I'm really pleased to see this like this bot, because then it's kind of a catch-all, and it's like probably better to be safe than sorry.
Gotcha. I agree with you on terms of like racism and anti-Semitism and all these things that are very
Yeah.
negative. But I wonder if it'll go all the way to the edge and kind of
Too far. Yeah.
like completely take out banter from games. And
Mhm.
I use Crunchy. I like anime, as you can see
Yeah.
from my like,
Yeah.
figures here.
Totally.
Crunchyroll is an app where you can like stream anime like Netflix, and they had a very cool section where you can comment. So you
Mm.
can comment about the episode that you were watching and discuss it with people. There's always some toxic, like stupid people, it is
Yeah.
what it is. But we would have like very awesome conversations there about the episode. And it felt
Mm.
like a very social and fun activities.
Yeah.
Different from Netflix. It's like, oh, I'm
Totally.
watching this anime episode, but I'm talking about it with different people all over the world. It's fun.
Right.
But they completely discontinued the comment section.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, whoa, what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah, because for me, I think, and Crunchyroll is so big that, like, they probably can't effectively carry this out, but
Gotcha.
wouldn't a reasonable solution be, like, community leadership? Like, wouldn't it
Sure.
be, like, putting, like and that's a lot to put on, like, because you see this, like, in Reddit too, right? Like, where there's, like, subreddits and there's moderators and stuff like that, and it's like that job, depending on the subreddit you're in, can get overwhelming, and it's like people are just, like, volunteering to do this and, like, holy yeah, it just gets, like it can get, like, out of hand, but wouldn't that
Yeah.
make sense to keep it, like, community-led and just say so, like, someone can use their discretion, like, "Oh, this person swore because they were quoting something from the show,"
Sure.
or, like,
Sure.
this wasn't derogatory because it was like an expression. It wasn't like, whatever. You can use some discretion when it's
Mhm.
a human as opposed to like a bot. So it would be nice to see companies like have to really like it empowers people, right? It empowers their user base. And I
Exactly.
get I should be more maybe more hopeful, but I can kind of get cynical sometimes, and I feel like, well, sometimes these companies are just too big to do that. Like they're just too big. Like
Mm.
they don't like,
Right.
even though that's like that is probably like what's best for people. They just don't want to do what's best for people. It's not efficient for them. It's they don't get returns on
Exactly.
it. So breaks my heart, but yeah, I'm sorry. That sucks. So did you just like go to Reddit now, or like where are you? Like where are you and all the Crunchyroll people going? Like,
That's a good question. I guess Reddit would be one place, but it took the whole social aspect of the thing because some
yeah,
people were trolling. And I'm gonna be honest, I like a little bit of spice in my stuff.
yeah,
A little bit of
yeah, yeah.
trolling, a little bit of swearing. It makes it
Love
interesting.
it.
It makes it fun. Trash
Yep.
talk is a very, especially for like for men when you play with your boys.
Yeah,
It's fun to trash talk. It's fun to have that experience. We bond over that. So seeing that being taken away, instead of like, hey, let's evaluate other solutions to keep people
yeah,
safe, but also allow them to have fun. That breaks my heart.
yeah. Like it doesn't, and it also doesn't teach you anything. It's like, okay, like I can still be myself. I just have to like I have to make sure I'm being respectful of others. Like that's the lesson we want, right?
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. You can be
yeah.
both.
Oh
Vanessa,
man,
let's go back to the company real quick.
sure.
You have such a novel concept of
Mhm.
having games on demand that are very good for your mental health, having this service. How do you look for investors? How do you pitch this very novel idea? I don't know, but a little
Yeah,
bird told me that you're very good at pitching. I don't know. I heard it
yeah.
somewhere.
Okay, so I'm good at pitching because I show up as myself.
Ooh,
So how do we pitch this concept? Yeah, this is novel. One thing I will say is that like where we're located in the Midwest, and gaming is still kind of a foreign concept to investors, and so we've had to do a lot of education, and that's okay. And it means that it's a slower game for us. And so I kind of
right.
have some tips when it comes to pitching. So like first thing that I would say is like you absolutely have to know your audience. And so for us here in the Midwest is like I make sure that I know who I'm talking to, and I like and that's not always possible, but then you have to be available and like willing to pivot and like read the room and like do I see the person right in front of me. So one of the first things I ask people before I even get started, I'm like, have you ever heard of Kozee Gaming? Are you familiar with Kozee Gaming?
Gotcha.
Do you play video games? Because you'd be surprised. I think sometimes you go into a room and there's like a bunch of older white men, and like actually some of them play games. And so it's like, oh, then you start to build like that bridge and like that common ground. And it's like, oh, at first you thought, oh, maybe this person won't understand me at all. And it can be easy to be cynical, but they actually do. And so like knowing your audience is super important. So like, that's like absolutely like number one tip. The second thing, is that like, I've won several pitch competitions, and I would love to tell you it's because I'm just so talented and I'm just like so
Ooh,
amazing. And
that's
like,
that's what I heard. That's
I
what I
would
heard.
love to tell you that, but you know what? The secret is I practice a lot. Like I
Gotcha.
practice so much. Like if I'm going into a pitch competition, I practice hours, and then I was speaking at I gave a talk, a 45-minute talk at a gaming conference in Los Angeles last summer, and
Oh,
I practiced a lot for that one, and it looked so chill. I was like, one arm on the podium, and I'm just like talking to the people like this kind of, but like I practiced all of that. Like that's all like there's a lot of practice, a lot of just like thinking about like the logistics and like making sure that I hit my points, um, you know, clearly. Yeah. And that's actually something, I learned from like a coach of mine. He was just like, honestly, you can't overlook practice. Like,
right.
just like, I mean, and some people don't have time to practice. Like I actually just won a pitch competition 2 weeks ago that I had no time to practice. I probably
Ooh,
only gave it like 2 hours. But the thing is, like, I've practiced so much before that I was actually able to practice a little less, and then I was still successful. And part of it too was like I read the room, so like I really knew like who I was talking to. These were healthcare people, so I positioned my company as a gaming company, but then also talk about like we do have a regulatory strategy. Here's what it is. I'm always looking for more insights on that. So just making sure I'm engaging them and being really
right, right.
thoughtful about their expertise as well. And then finally it's like, do you know like the judges and the rubric? Because what I found in a lot of pitch
Ooh,
competitions is like if there's a rubric, and I don't know why this is the case, but often the speakers get a different rubric than the judges do. And I don't always,
oh,
that feels unfair. And so I always try to clarify that with the coordinators like ahead of time. And the competitions where I've been most successful have been the ones where I like absolutely nail the rubric and
mhm,
show up as myself. So like, so I said, know your audience, practice, and know if there's a rubric. And then all of this, like none of this matters is if you show up and you're trying to be someone else. And I've said that already, but you have to be authentic. You have to just like know who you are. And like when I take the microphone, like nothing else matters. Like people, their eyes are on me. They're not even looking at my deck. Like
ooh.
nothing else matters. I get up there and I say, my name is Vanessa and I'm a really anxious person. And that's usually how I start. And then people are
Oh,
like,
okay.
oh God. And then I say like, well, I'm actually like, been dealing with anxiety my whole life. And then I talk about how, I talk about like what I shared before. It's like where I actually went on disability for anxiety. And like, I tell them about the time I had a panic attack while I was driving to work. And
Mm,
that's often like
mhm,
the
mhm.
hook I use. But it's like, you really got to hook the people and then clearly say like the problem, like, this is super clear. Here's our solution. Here's why we're different. Here's what our competitors are doing. Here's the opportunity. That's the
Right.
market. Like, we're raising this much money. Are you going to join us or not? Is kind of like how I end it. And then people
Dang.
are like, yeah, let's go. So that's usually how it goes. And like, I keep the energy high,
Yeah.
keep them really focused, and yeah.
Okay. Awesome. When it comes to authenticity, why do you think so many people are afraid of being themselves when pitching?
Good question. I think it is like it takes guts to put yourself out there, and I think it
Mhm.
it hurts when people like criticize your pitch because that's an extension of you, right? Like this is like when people criticize my company, that's an extension of me. I think that I have, because like I made it, right? So I think there's like that real fear. Um, I think too, there's a lot of, there's a lot of like inequality in our world and inequity. And I think there's this concept of like money's scarce, and like if there's limited money, then like I have to know
Mm,
exactly what I need to do to get these people to write me a check.
right,
So I have to like get on their terms in order for them to like me and want to trust me with this check. And that's true in some cases. So I think that's true when it comes to like, a venture capitalist says like, I want to meet with you. I'm available
mm,
on these times. When can you meet? Like you
right,
meet on their schedule. Like just make it work. Like I don't care, make it work.
right,
Um,
right,
or like, hey, like we need to see your data room. Can you give us the link? And like we want to see your go to market strategy. Well, your go to market strategy better match the sophistication that they're used to, right?
right.
So like that's where it makes sense to be like on their terms. But when it comes to like presenting like the company and like who you are, like that has to be you. And I think sometimes, and I fall into this, I fall into this too. I think sometimes we conflate that, or like we forget that like there's a time to be like professional on their terms and professional like on my terms. And just understanding like the nuance of that is something that comes with practice, and it comes with time. And if I'm being honest, like I get it right most of the time. Sometimes
Yeah,
I make mistakes, but like you got to keep learning, and just like that humility I think is what carries people, and that's what investors want to see.
100%. And from our conversation, I can tell that you're a very awesome communicator. And I'm sure I've never seen your pitch. I would love to
Yeah.
see one day, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure if this is how you like show yourself to the world, I'm sure it'll be amazing.
It's funny. First of all, thank you. That's really kind. It's funny you say that. Like, I had an investor who was like, I kind of understand what you're doing. I'm not into video games. I play one game on my phone, but
Right.
I want to bet on you. Like, I'm betting on you. And like,
Ooh.
um, he even said, he's like, if you're going to shut the lights off, I'll shake my couch cushions loose. Like you let me know what you need. And I really, took that to heart. I was like, wow, like, cause that's what people are doing. Like, and for anyone out there raising money, it's a good reminder, for myself even, to remember like people are betting on, they're not betting on the horse, they're betting on the
Yes.
jockey. And like,
Yes.
what a terrible, what a terrible metaphor. But, they're betting on the jockey. Right. And I think, they want to see someone like who's going to do this, whether they get funded or not, who's going to run through a brick wall for their end user, who's going to, and like, that's me. Like, that's my co-founder, myself. Like, that's what we're doing. Like, we bootstrapped our company. We worked a day job, and, I was working on Better Play 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern, and then 6 to 10 p.m. Eastern, in
Mhm.
between like my day job. Right. And then
Right.
I got laid off, and then I went full time into the company. And like, the things that we do to make this happen, they really, like, investors really believe in that.
I love that. For closing the show, I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
what's the ultimate vision for Kozee, for Better Play Studios? What's the ultimate vision? The
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah. So we want to be the thought leaders on gaming and mental health. Like, we want to be like the place where people go to get games that are good for their mental health, that don't sacrifice the fun. This is, we want to be like ubiquitous, but like you said before, like the Xbox Game Pass of mental health gaming. Like that's really what we want to be. Um, I believe that we can have a lasting impact in public health. Like, I believe that like video games are hiding in plain sight as powerful tools, and we're here to help unlock that for everybody.
All right, awesome, perfect. And where can people find you? Potential investors, potential
Yeah.
collaborators, where can people find you?
Okay, so go to our website, betterplaystudios.com. Check out our web app. It's an MVP, so keep in mind it's a draft. Kozee, KOZEE.games. And then honestly, find me on LinkedIn. Vanessa Lane is my name. And then I answer emails, lane@betterplaystudios.com. So send me an email. I will get back to you.
Yeah, guys, and we're gonna have all those links in the description below. Definitely, I was introduced to Vanessa, and she was super chill, very down to collaborate, super down to earth. So, if you're an investor, potential collaborator, like click that link
Absolutely.
right now, right now. Vanessa, thank you for coming into the show. It was a pleasure having you.
It was an honor to be here. Thanks for the invitation.